You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
That second one sounds more like the agreement I would like. Not too crazy legalese info, but it is easy to understand, right? So let's just take a step back, because you did name a lot of things in there that you put in there. But so one of the things that, now as you mentioned, October 1st is when, people are going to be incorporating for realtors. I'm actually retiring on October 1st. So I am going to be, looking at JVs at that point in time. I don't want too many. I still want to be very picky. Just as important as they pick me, it's important that I, work with them, because it's a 5 to 7+ year, relationship in a way. So, and there's probably a lot of people that are, Alfonso's a pro with JVs, but I'm going to now be doing it too. So with that said, what are some really important conversations and topics to have before we get to you, right? Like, there's obviously discussions that have to be had, conversations about, some of those things that you actually listed off, but what are, taking a step back, good things for JVs to talk about before they put ink to paper?
Yeah, I think you have to have, whether you make it more of a formal or informal conversation between you and your other partners, you've got to have that discussion about, okay, who are all the parties going to be? Like, is it just the two of us? Is there a third? Is there a fourth? Like, how many of us are there? How long is this for? Like, what's the term of this JV going to be? And then, who's doing what role in the JV, and what's the purpose of the JV? Like, are we doing a BRRRR? Are we doing, are we going to do 4 projects that make up this JV, 2 BRRRRs, an RTO, and conversion? What are we doing, right? And then within what are we doing, you have to say, okay, JV1 is doing these roles and responsibilities. JV2 is doing these ones, JV3 is doing these ones, and so forth, right? So really just coming together, again, it's depending on your style, sitting down and having a formal or informal discussion about all of those things we just kind of talked about. And then the further points to that would be, okay, now that we know the projects, the scope, who's doing what are some of the key milestones? Who's putting what into the project? Is it blood, sweat, and hard work for, JV1, and that's what gets them their payout? And for JV2, it's, hey, you got to put down the $100,000 we need for the deposit and down payment and be on the mortgage, and that's it for you? Or is it a bit of a mix? So what are the inputs? Key milestones, I mentioned that, is it a 4 or 5 year project, as you alluded to? And so each year, are there going to be key milestones? Are there going to be interim, payouts back to the partners throughout the course of the JV because it's doing so well each year, like as annual income return, or is it all just at the very end? Are there monthly milestones? And then, what's the final, projected or possible range of rate of return? Everybody wants to know, as best you can, what that might look like. And the last one, which is typically the most uncomfortable one to talk about, and it's probably the one that's usually glossed over or forgotten about, because everybody's pumped about, doing a real estate deal. They don't, and you're in love with each other because you're obviously, working together and you're pumped. You don't think, well, we can't possibly disagree. We can't possibly not like each other in a year's time, right? And have 3 years to go. So the discussion needs to be had of, like, how would you go through a divorce? Like, how would you split from each other and, make one another whole, or, however you want to call it, how do you terminate the JV? And you want to try to do that doing 2 things, preserving as much of your positive reputation as possible, because even though it's a big world out there, it's a small community. You know, word's going to travel fast if like Alfonso's not a good guy to deal with, which is not true, of course, but you know, you want to keep your reputation even in a difficult situation, you know, positive. And then number two, you want to do it as quickly and as cost effectively as possible, right? So you know, mediation, arbitration, going to court, those are not quick, easy, and cheap, right? If you have COVID, they're not even possible, right? I mean, you can't even do those things during a COVID type of environment. So having some sort of like divorce mechanism or a discussion head is pretty important, I think.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm not sure if it was on a previous podcast or at the live events, or I know even it might have been Chad from your office as well too. That so you know what, they shouldn't be called agreements. They should be called disagreements, because that's the only time that you look at them, right? Is when there is a disagreement, right? Because when things are going well and the cash flow's coming in, no one's going to be like, oh wait, my agreement said you're only supposed to give me 500 cash flow. You gave me 6. Oh wait, right? It's when those negative things happen, and it's impossible to predict every possible outcome and have that written out. And like you said, that might be 500 pages, and not even like nobody had a global pandemic in any of their agreements. I am almost sure of it. Maybe you can speak to that. But it's having that. I think the two conversations that I want to unpack with that you said was really having the conversation, whether you are the active partner, the money partner, or combination, is understanding what the goals are for each person, right? And then the agreement pretty much puts that into place, right? Because if two people really want to be passive, well, no one's going to be doing anything. And if both people are going to be active, then there's going to be always a disagreement on who's going to be doing what. And okay, no, I'm doing this and stepping over each other's toes. So I think those are the things that have to be clearly laid out. And then, yeah, like I love what you said, is some type of mechanism that, okay, we don't agree. Okay, we're going to this way here to avoid arbitration, courts, all that kind of stuff. And then putting that out there. So like, again, when you're, is there something that like has to be like a certain timeline that, you know, some investors want to prefer, or typically, or is it really kind of up to the agreement, up to the type of strategy that the investor that's looking for the JV partner kind of is planning?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything set in stone or any like automatic go-to time frame or timeline. I like your point that you made about disagreement. That probably was Chad. He's clever like that. It is really a disagreement rather than agreement. But also, I mean, understanding each other and your goals, you know, of what you want to accomplish out of a project, and how you want your roles and responsibilities within that project to work are crucial. As you said, if you've got two people that really just want to be passive, well, it's going to be probably hard to make that project work as effectively as if you had a passive and active partner, like true active and passive partners. So yeah, no, 100% that's crucial to determine upfront. I mean, I think the sooner you can have this conversation with each other and start, you know, banging out the informal, like to Sarah's point, hey, you know, I'm going to be, you know, retired and, you know, now really, you know, deep into all of this stuff. She was already deep, but now she's getting really deep. You know, you want to do these kinds of conversations as early on. So number one, you can feel out whether or not you feel like you got a good fit with somebody. And it's okay if you don't have a good fit, trust your gut. So, you know, that's your best mechanism sometimes. Just be like, you know what? I don't know. I just, something's not right. It's not anything against the person. It's just not, it just doesn't feel right. I gotta look again. I gotta look elsewhere, right? But then if you feel like, oh yeah, this is great, everything feels amazing about this whole scenario, you start having that conversation about all the terms, you know, over coffee or a beer or whatever, and you start, you know, writing down all your informal items and points, and then, you know, one of you gets your lawyer to draft it up, right? And then this is crucial. Get them, if you draft it up, get them to have their lawyer review it. If they're not willing to spend, a couple $100 for their lawyer to review it, that tells you something right there.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.